Hello everyone and welcome to Pyanodons Mods. This is Otaku Showboat, and in this tutorial, I think we're going to talk a bit about combustion. Specifically, how to get power through combustion mixture and turbines. As per usual, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to make sure that this tutorial series is visible higher up in search results. You can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/otakushowboat, follow me on Twitter at otakushowboat, and visit my website at otakushowboat.com. You can help support my continued existence and help to accelerate the production of these tutorials by becoming a patron on Patreon at patreon.com/otakushowboat, and you can also help support Pyanodons Mods developments at patreon.com/pyanodon. As a disclaimer, Pyanodons Mods are in a constant state of flux, so any numbers I present may change. The mods for this particular save file are nearly identical to my stream save, the list of which is linked on my stream schedule page below. The only difference is that I am using the Infinity mod here to showcase the various things that you can do with the combustion mixture. So with that said, let us get started. And I am going to apologize in advance in case the game does crash. I have been experiencing some issues lately with the game crashing. I have just recorded an announcement video where I discuss what's been going on and my solution to that. Let's just say that I have memory on the way to help take care of this. I do have some bad memory currently, some bad parts of my memory in my computer, so that is being worked on, and some fresh modules of memory are on their way, so expect that eventually. I don't think I will have that issue in this particular save. However, I have yet to have the game crash on this particular save due to memory and access violations, so let us get started. Now, going in and bringing up the powerhouse, as well as cooling towers and combustion turbines. Combustion turbines, cooling towers, and beautiful, wonderful, wherever the heck it showed up in this list, powerhouses. You'll get access to these at Red Science. What do you need to do to get a lot of power in the early game? That is the question we are going to answer today. So you have just finished up making your Red Science. You're probably not very happy with your current power production from Steam. What can you do? Well, there is this recipe to make power from hydrogen. This is probably going to be your go-to recipe for power generation going forward. There are many options for making power with combustion mixture. Every single one of these recipes will have a varying level of temperature of combustion mixture. The maximum temperature is 1000 degrees Celsius. Combustion turbines will combust the combustion mixture and make power up to, in this case for the Mark I tower, 24.8 megawatts, up to at 1000 degrees Celsius. The easy way to think about this, the easy way that I think about this, is that the temperature of the combustion mixture is basically a percentage output. So with this hydrogen 520C combustion mixture, that will give you approximately 52% of the 24.8 megawatts. 52% of 24.8. So 24.8 times 0.52 is 12.8 12.96, or about 12.9 megawatts per combustion turbine. That should be easy enough to understand. The efficiency, by the way, is already taken into account in the maximum power output value that is being displayed. You don't really need to pay too much attention to the efficiency. I personally don't pay attention to it. That you can get into the actual more complex, precise dynamics of how exactly to the decimal point how much power you're getting out of these systems. To the average person, don't consider the efficiency value because it's effectively already taken into account on that maximum power output value. And the temperature of the combustion mixture going into the turbine is the percentage of the actual maximum output that you will get. So if it's 520C, that's 52%. It's 520 out of 1,000. Or 52 out of 100. So 52% is the power output that you get. It scales quite nicely that way. Now, this will consume 60 units of combustion mixture per second if you have a demand that is at or above that 12.896 megawatts. So at maximum performance, at peak performance of the available performance at 100%, it will consume 60 units of combustion mixture per second. If we look at hydrogen, which is the most used here, this will make, by itself, 50 units per second for a single powerhouse, while this will consume 60. So, what is the ratio? Oh boy, ratios. Remember, these things will change over time. So, 300 divided by 50 is 6. And then 300 over 60 is 5. So it is 6 powerhouses to 5 combustion turbines. 6 powerhouses Mark 1 to 5 Mark 1 and 2 combustion turbines. Because there are increased Mark levels of the combustion turbines. Let me just clear out some of this random stuff in the inventory that I have here. There are Mark II and there are Mark III combustion turbines, just like there are Mark II, III, and 4 versions of the powerhouse that will have different crafting speeds and will change things dramatically. As well as Mark II versions of the cooling tower, but we will get to that shortly. The Mark II combustion turbine is just a little bit bigger. It's about 4 times bigger. Little bit more than 4 times bigger than the Mark I combustion turbine. And the combustion turbine Mark III is bigger still. Is even bigger still than the Mark II. So if you're trying to design with the ability to scale up your combustion turbines over time, you will have to bear in mind that this is a massive building. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 by 9 on the Mark III. 9 by 9 versus a 7 by 7 versus a 3 by 3. So do bear that in mind. The Mark II consumes 60 fluid per second. It has an efficiency of 95%, so its maximum power output is 56.1 megawatts. So you can easily replace with Mark IIs without having to modify your powerhouse ratio at all. The Mark III, though, will output 130 megawatts max at 1000 C. However, it consumes 90 fluid per second now. It now consumes 90 fluid per second, not 60. So this will change the maximum number for the amount of fluid that you're producing. But that will come very, very late in the game. For now, though, we will concern ourselves with the Mark Is. Now, the reason why I point out hydrogen in particular is that electrolyzers make hydrogen for you by splitting water. Water is an infinite resource. Therefore, 400 water or 400 hydrogen. I'm looking at Mark IIs. I should be looking at Mark Is here. 400 hydrogen is 8 Mark I electrolyzers. 8 Mark I electrolyzers. Bear in mind that these do have an 800 kilowatt energy consumption each. So 8 by 800. That's 6.4 megawatts. 6.4 megawatts. Let's keep that in mind. 6.4 megawatts. Going forward. 6 of these powerhouses will also need 6 units per second of coke plus fuel to operate. The fuel that these use is 200 kilowatts. 200 kilowatts, or 200 kilojoules per second per building. So 200 times 8, that's 1.6 megajoules per second, which that's a fraction of a unit of coke per second. Coke has a fuel value of 5 megajoules, one higher than coal. So if 1 unit of coke is 5 megajoules, you only need 1.6 here, or 1.2 here to feed the actual power. So fraction of a unit per second of coke. So it's really 6 point some odd units of coke that you need to feed into this, which, if you were to use that coke on steam engines, 6 times 5, that would be 30 megawatts, a bit over 30 megawatts of power that this amount of coke could provide through standard steam boilers. So bear that in mind. That is what you are spending here. You are basically spending 30 megawatts, little over 30 megawatts of power. I guess we could say 31.2 megawatts of power plus the 6.4. So 31.2 plus 6.4 is 37.6. Then we have to take into consideration the amount of water and steam being produced out of these. You can use cooling towers to return the water. At the start of the game, 5 cooling towers will be enough to get your steam converted back into water, and you can have this as a closed loop, not have to worry about it ever again. Or do you? The issue with doing closed water loops for your power is what happens when you start consuming more power than you are producing? What happens then? Well, what happens is that everything that uses power slows down, including your cooling towers. Which means you're going to start backing up your powerhouse with steam on its output because your cooling tower won't be able to properly convert the steam back into water, which will further reduce how much power you are producing, resulting in the performance of your cooling tower being reduced even further until eventually everything will stop. This is known as a positive feedback loop, by the way. Even though it is feeding back down to 0, it is still referred to as a positive feedback loop. In order to avoid this, unfortunately, you don't have too much recourse in the early game besides doing something like setting up a traditional boiler line specifically to power this. You will want to consider having a separate power network to power your power. Preferably something that is not subject to positive feedback loops. The most efficient way, or should we say the most common way of doing this, would be to use solar panels. Solar panels are very, very, very consistent. They are not subject to positive feedback loops. You just have to make sure you have enough of them to provide the power to your machines that are providing even more power than the solar panels. Remember, this ultimately saves you space. However, solar panels don't come until a little bit later. You have to make pyrite to make them. So if you're at Red Science, you're not going to have solar panels yet. So you're not going to have very good recourse. What you could do, however, is in pipe petroleum handling, because I know that Pyanodon will point this out if I don't point this out, the oil burner exists for good reason. You can use oil burners to burn crude oil or whatever combustible fluid that you want to make power to feed your power. I'll note that even then, in the really early game, even though I'm explaining this combustion turbine stuff in the really early game, yeah, oil burners are probably going to be a better source of primary power for you. Just gonna throw that out there. Maybe consider oil burners as an alternative, but this is a tutorial for combustion power, so we'll talk about that at another time. So, basically what I'm saying is if you are using cooling towers, power it separately with something that is not subject to feedback loops. Or, in the alternative, tailings ponds exist. And you may want to consider installing a water anywhere type of mod, such as the stone water wells mod, or, you know, there's explosive excavation, there's water fill, there's water pumps, like, there's lots of different options for you that you may want to consider just because Pyanodon's mods use a ton of water overall. And you can do something like this. Because tailings ponds void gases. Tailings ponds void gases. That includes steam. Tailings ponds will void steam, which is a very, very, very important thing to consider. And they will void a lot of steam. A lot of steam. And you know what that does? Tailings ponds don't use power, nor do the deep water wells or any sort of water fill or offshore pumps. Meaning that you can set up this and not have to ever worry about a positive feedback loop destroying your system in that way. In that way. I'll throw that out there. It won't destroy your system through a positive feedback loop affecting your closed water loops. No, instead it'll be a positive feedback loop. Or actually, you know what? Because this is also powered through actual fuel, the only positive feedback loop that can happen here is you over consume power, therefore you will produce your mining or your whatever you're doing to get coke. The whole process of getting your coke will slow down to the point where you will not be able to shove enough coke into this to keep producing your power, and that is a more standard positive feedback loop that can happen. Which is why I also suggest power your coke production on its own separate independent power network. The same one providing power to if you're using a closed water loop setup. Now, this is not a tutorial on how to get coke. I explain that constantly in my tutorials. I am not going to reiterate that on this one. Rejoice. I'm not going to talk about the mushroom-based coke process here. So, we have determined, and I am going to assume that you're doing this process and not the closed water loop when looking at the math for this. This will produce 300 units per second of combustion mixture. That will be 5 towers. 5 towers, and we've already determined that we have 12.896 megawatts per combustion tower, so times that by 5, and we have 64.48 megawatts. 64.48 megawatts. We then have to subtract the 37.6 that it takes to feed this system. Ultimately, that gets consumed in this system. And, well, from that we get 26.88 megawatts net. This, however, is taking a look at things quite simplistically. It is not actually looking at the true power draw of the production of your coke. That is simply looking at the fuel value of the coke and not so much the power that it took to get the amount of coke. It is actually technically it's less power, I believe, per unit of coke. Otherwise, why would you? Like, it has to be less power used to generate the coke than what the coke can give you, right? Because you are making power out of it. That's the whole point, is you're making power out of it. Why? You wouldn't be able to generate power from coke if it took more power to make the coke than what the coke could produce. So, there is that to consider. So, ultimately, it's not that much power net that you get from one of these setups in the early game. And you have to consider you end up with 200 units per second of oxygen as well that you need to deal with out of this. You will need oxygen for other things, like casting of plates, specifically casting of molten iron, or making molten iron, I should say, in the very first place. In the early game, you can use your oxygen to make molten iron, and then use the hydrogen to give yourself some extra power. So there's the Mark 1. However, if you are using Mark 2 combustion turbines, it is now 52% of 56.1. So 56.1 times 0.52, that's 29.172 megawatts per combustion tower. Or turbine, I should say. If you have 5 of those instead, well, that's 145.86 megawatts for the same inputs. Subtract the 37.6 and you're at a net 100 megawatts. So you got 108.26 megawatts as I turn to allow the kitty off of my lap, who's been here the entire video. That's right, this entire video I have had a cat on my lap. Good old Cole. So, upgrading from Mark 1 to Mark 2, it should be really high on your priority list as soon as you get access to Circuit 2s. And really what I'd say is probably consider skipping the Mark 1 turbine phase. Probably consider skipping it. Just because this has been an example with the hydrogen. There are other fluids here, but for the most part, they end up using a lot more power. For the most part, they end up using more power to make it, and it's really just a wash for a lot of this stuff. It's best to, for some of this, only burn your excess production to make a bit of spare power. That's how I would treat the combustion mixture recipes at like red science and at green science, is treat it as a way to use excess of these combustible fluids or gases, which are technically fluids, but whatever, that you're overproducing, or that you have as byproducts that you need to just burn anyway, that you need to void anyway, to get a bit of extra power. And that is how I would personally treat that. Until you get to Circuit 2s. Then things change. At Circuit 2s, things massively change. Because at Circuit 2s, you get access to your first modules. Modules make all the difference. They make all the difference. You want to have as much efficiency as you can in all of your electrolyzers here for your hydrogen power. If you're doing the hydrogen power mixture, get your Mark II combustion turbines, maybe get your Mark II powerhouses if you want to use Mark II powerhouses. It's up to you. That just saves space. Ultimately, it doesn't really change too much of the equation, but efficiency in your electrolyzers, efficiency in your mushroom farms, efficiency in your high-pressure furnaces, converting your mushrooms into coal, efficiency into your basic oxygen furnaces and your quenching towers, turning your coal into coke at that phase of the game. Just be sure that you efficiency module literally everything, and you set up enough solar panels at that phase in the game to power your power. The efficiency modules will massively reduce the amount of power that you need to power your power, which reduces the overall footprint of the solar panels that you need to power your power. And that is ultimately the key to your mid into late game power. It is so powerful that that will be your source of power for the rest of the game. At this point in time, the fusion energy isn't that great. It isn't that great / worth doing over this type of a setup. And of course, you will also be able to use your oxygen by that point in the game. By the time you're at Circuit 2s, even at Green Science, you can actually use your oxygen to make syngas. You could actually choose to make syngas and burn your syngas. That is a very common thing to do as well. Burn syngas from the oxygen that you're getting out of these electrolyzers. There is a recipe to convert coal gas to syngas by adding oxygen. Make your coal gas, convert it to syngas with oxygen, using all the oxygen produced out of here. Take all the hydrogen and make it into power through the hydrogen recipe. Take all the syngas and make it into combustion mixture in the syngas recipe. If you want to combine fluid mixtures of different temperatures, it will average the temperatures. That is the other thing I want to make note of. If you combine combustion mixture from different recipes with different fuel value or different temperatures of output of combustion mixtures, it will average them in the pipes. So bear that in mind when calculating your final values. And maybe consider keeping your combustion mixture pipelines separate. So with that, I think I've just about covered what I want to say about the combustion towers slash turbines and all of that good stuff and generating power in the early into mid game. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to leave comments, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and all that good stuff to make sure that this series remains higher up in search results. You can follow me on Twitch at Otaku Showboat, follow me on Twitter at Otaku Showboat, visit my website at otakushowboat.com, and become a Patreon on Patreon at patreon.com/Otaku Showboat. You can also help support continued mod development at patreon.com/Pyanodons, and I will see you all on the next tutorial.